So again, my name is Roni. I graduated in 2018. I studied global studies and human rights in the college, and then I moved to Vienna, Austria with the support of a Fulbright grant. And today's session is called Beyond LinkedIn, Building Meaningful Connections in a Digital World. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Again, you can join at any time by going to wooclap.com/beyondlinkedin to join. To get started, just go ahead and fill in what comes to mind when you think of digital networking. It can be anything that comes to mind. Go for it. I know we have 30 people in here. LinkedIn and Zoom. Troublesome. Reaching out via email, definitely. LinkedIn's getting bigger. Many people are probably thinking about LinkedIn. It's new, for sure. Lots of people. Let's see. Awesome. Thank you all so much for for participating. Messages, platforms, virtual, absolutely. Social networks, great. We're going to talk about social networks. Awesome. Like 10 more seconds. Last chance. You can also like the answers that you enjoy the most. Twitter, for sure. All right. And we're getting more and more, and LinkedIn just continues to get bigger. Scary, yes, I understand. Hopefully this can help ease a little bit of the fear with it all. Impersonal, absolutely. Hopefully we can address that. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue. But LinkedIn's absolutely the largest one. And I predicted it, of course, because if we're talking about digital networking, it's almost impossible not to mention LinkedIn. And that's why the title of this talk is also Beyond LinkedIn. But of course, if we're talking about digital LinkedIn or digital networking, we have to talk about LinkedIn. Absolutely. It is a given that you have to have a LinkedIn today. This was already true before the pandemic, but even more so now. People around the world are in the same exact position as you are, and they're trying to find ways to connect just online, and the #1 platform for that is LinkedIn. So if you don't have one, you need to have a LinkedIn. If you haven't updated your LinkedIn in a while, this is absolutely the time to do it. LinkedIn rabbit holes are definitely a thing. People are just searching and going down, connecting with their first, second, third connections, and they will find you. So make sure that what they find is what you want to be seen as. But let's go ahead and talk about some alternatives. Now, does anybody in the audience have any ideas of other things that you could use besides LinkedIn? Yep. Email, Facebook, ResearchGate, Lunch Club.
Hey, Roni, I'm sorry to interrupt. I may have joined a second late. How do you put in your responses?
So you want to go to wooclap.com/beyond LinkedIn here. It should be right here at the top.
Okay.
You can go on your browser, and then you can join at any time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, just a couple more seconds. Alumni, absolutely. Fitness apps, emails, schedule meetings, Glassdoors, great. Relevant webinars, you're all doing great with that. It's a relevant webinar. All right, just a couple more seconds. We have Twitter, Slack. Awesome. Seeing some that are even new to me. Great. All right, let's go ahead and continue. But this will be recorded and put on YouTube. So if you see anything on here that you want to check out after the webinar, you'll be able to look back at this. GitHub, that's also good, depending on what you're looking for. So now I came up with a few of my own that we can talk about, and some of the ones we'll talk about specifically are Slack and some social media. So yes, Slack, many people might know it if they are in a Slack community for their current job. But what many people don't know is there are many professional communities that you can join. Some maybe you have to have an application process or you have to pay to join, but it's really worth looking up relevant Slack communities. And I'll give a list in a second about that. Yes, social media absolutely can be a part of online and digital networking. Facebook groups, public Facebook groups. Facebook is, I think for a lot of people, not so much the social media-esque platform as it used to be, but a lot more about professional networking right now. So it's important to keep that in mind. Reddit, subreddits, we'll talk about that. Even Twitter, that depends on the person, what you're looking for, but that is a very common way that people do digital digital connecting right now. Lunch Club is a platform that a few people mentioned in the last one, and this is it's a LinkedIn-esque type of platform for connecting. And U Chicago Alumni has a new group that you can join. So if you want to go ahead and get started with this new form of networking, definitely check out Lunch Club. I have this bit.ly/Chicago Lunch Club, so you can get there very easily. And then Meetup, you might think of Meetup as a way of connecting with people in person, but actually, especially right now, they have a lot of online events too. So one thing that you can kind of do as a general rule is look at various platforms and then just start searching for your field of interest or your hobbies or whatever you might be able to connect with people about, and then you can see what's out there. So when we're talking about Slack, so just some general Slack communities, quick Google searches can find you tons of different things, but some very popular professional ones are Freelance, which are for freelance professionals, of course. Same with Startup, it's for startup founders. Some pretty self-explanatory ones. Launch is if you are an entrepreneur, designer, developer, maker. Tech Masters are self-proclaimed technologists. And let's see, Online Geniuses is for social media marketing, SEO specialists, side project, or for people that work on side projects and are looking for collaborators. So all of these are different places where you can connect with people all around the world just that have similar interests and are looking for the same things that you are. So quick Google searches can find you things like that. You can also find what exactly the application process is, if you have to pay, things like that. And then subreddits. This is one that's fairly new to me. I knew that, of course, Reddit existed. It's been around for a long time, but actually there is a lot of very fruitful connection that is happening on subreddits. And there are so many subreddits that are for whichever interest or field that you may be looking for. Some that I've listed here, productivity is really great. It's not networking specifically, but there are a lot of really relevant and useful tips, especially right now where people all over are in the same situation. They're like, how do I stay productive when I'm at home? How do I connect? How do I do whatever? You can find a lot of really helpful advice on productivity. Get Motivated is also it's one of many that's for mindset and moving forward. So if you're working on career development, you'll find like-minded people that way. And then more specific career development ones. Career Guidance is great for advice on how to progress in a career or how to get a job that you want. Ask HR, like it sounds, you can ask HR professionals for advice about whatever it is. You can also see what other people are asking, even if you don't ask questions yourselves. And you'll see very quickly, if you haven't spent a lot of time on Reddit, just going to one of these, you can see that people are very, very useful. And what usually makes the front pages of these communities are the relevant posts. So give or take, it ends up being you can usually find really quality content if you know what you're looking for and you go in for what you're looking for. Leadership is the same thing. You can find people in leadership positions answering questions that are posed to them. And this is a great way to get connected with people. You never know if somebody that you start messaging, you end up separating outside and connecting off of the website. But even if that doesn't happen, you can still get a lot of authentic advice. Of course, you want to take things with a grain of salt. It is the internet, and the commonalities are, groupthink can also come in there as well. But another thing you can look for in subreddits is your specific field of interest and your hobbies. And even if it's a very specific hobby that you connect with on a subreddit, you never know. There are lots of stories of people that meet in a subreddit about fitness, and then it ends up turning into actually something career development wise outside of it. So definitely recommend going through and just seeing what the communities are that are out there, especially if you haven't done that much yourself. All right. And then Facebook groups, all these things, same exact type of thing. Just go through the platforms, search for what's relevant to you, and you will likely find useful sources where you can connect with people online, especially right now. Everyone's trying to do it. So all these communities have been booming over the past 7 or so months. All right. But the bottom line, though, whenever you are doing all of these things, you want to make sure that everywhere you can be found on the internet should also reflect how you want to be found on the internet, or what we can call perhaps your professional narrative, so to speak. So what is a professional narrative? You could also think of it as personal search engine optimization. What do people find about you when they search for you? If somebody Googles your name, what do they see? Do they see what you want those people to see? Do the people that you want to be finding you, are they the ones finding you? And do they find what they're looking for? So it's kind of this backwards way of thinking about yourself, where instead of focusing on, okay, who exactly am I and who do I want to communicate to other people, you think about who you want to be found by, what are they looking for, and then how you can frame yourself to fit that in, of course, an authentic way. It's the same exact thing when you take your resume and you're applying for a specific job, and then you rewrite the words and you change things just slightly so it fits that exact job that you're applying for. It's the same type of thing. If you want to work backwards and think about, how do I want to be seen? What is the field that I am interested in? Who do I want to be found by? And then craft your online persona to match that. Of course, it's a balance between, you don't want to just craft something that isn't authentic to yourself. So that's why it takes a lot of thinking, working backwards. But the best way you can do this is just Google yourself and see what comes up and see if there's anything that needs to change. This is true when it comes to self-marketing, networking, or if you're applying for anything, you want to keep in mind who it is you want to be talking to. And one way that I recommend you can do this, if you really have no idea, you can try some form of reflective journaling, or some type of just thinking about, okay, what do I think is my personal narrative? Do I have a thesis statement about my career goals or what I want to be? And then see if what is found about you is the same thing. Make sure your biographies on any of these platforms are up to date, have a link to maybe your LinkedIn or your email, or ways that people can connect with you. So if you're using Reddit, for example, to connect professionally with people, make sure that your biography then has a way for people to connect, and that it is professional. And if you're using your Reddit for professional purposes, don't also use it for unprofessional purposes. You don't want to get those things mixed up, because people can find that very easily. All right. So now you've connected with someone on fill-in platform here. Now what? I want to ask you guys once again to have a little bit of interaction. How do you ask someone to connect over coffee over Zoom? A lot of us are probably used to connecting over coffee or reaching out back in the day when it was all in person, but how would you do it? Definitely an email. What do you say? LinkedIn, exactly. We can make this word cloud so email can get larger every time people do it. What words do you say? How do you phrase it? You can't say, let's connect over, cold message on LinkedIn. Still very effective. All right, direct messages, inboxing, informational interview. Right, so these are some of the phrases you can say. I'd love to have an informational interview. I'd love to pick your brain. I'm very curious about hearing your thoughts on XYZ. All right, would you care to chat? Let's connect. A lot of these seem very straightforward, but you have to just get yourself to do it. Send these messages, connect with the people, even if it feels a little bit scary to do it. Go for it. Time for a quick chat. That's great. You also want to be very clear about what you're looking for, what your questions are, or what it is that you're hoping to get from something. There's a lot that you can find online by experts of how to send an email, how to do all these things if that's new for you. We won't go into that today. All right, great. Thank you all for participating. All right. Great. So now you have a meeting scheduled for Thursday, 10:30 a.m. Now what? Let's talk about something very specific to today's day and age. It was already relevant before, but now it is all the more relevant: how to connect over video chat. If you read my bio, you know that I have various online jobs where I have a lot of video chat connecting with people, not just with networking, but also mentoring, and try to help people improve their self-networking and their self-marketing and all of these different things. And so I've compiled it into some steps that hopefully should be very concrete, practical advice to help you with this moving forward. So we're going to start with step 1, which is clean your virtual and physical desktop spaces. So this is true for just general productivity. You want to have a decluttered space, both physically and virtually, so you can focus on what you're talking about or what you're thinking about or whatever your work is doing. But you want to also do this before you have video chat conference with anybody or any type of network, just because even if you don't think it's going to affect you, it will subconsciously affect you, and you will be distracted potentially by whatever's going on. You want to be very focused on what it is that you are talking, or the person you're talking to. If you're meeting at a coffee shop or in an office, you most likely would not meet with papers all over the table or all over the desk in a very messy, skewed way. You would be meeting in some type of clear, hopefully distraction-free environment, and you want to try to replicate that when you're meeting online. This also means turning off your phone or turning over your phone. You don't want accidentally, even without meaning to, your eye to go down to a notification that pops up, because we're all used to seeing that blue light and glancing away even if we don't want to. That's all the more obvious when you are on a video chat with somebody. People can tell exactly where you're looking. We'll talk even further about that. In general, you maybe would want to make your video platform full screen or just have what's relevant on the screen. We'll talk about that more in a second as well. And just, again, mirror how it would look in person. Don't even give yourself the temptation to do anything else, because it is all the more obvious and all the more tempting when we think we have a bit of a buffer when we are connecting with someone over video chat. Now, step 2, seek AV perfection. Does anybody know what AV means? Or can anyone say what AV means?
Audio and visual.
Thank you. Audio and visual, exactly. And so perfection's a bit dramatic. You don't need to have the most high quality webcam, the most high quality sound. But what I mean by this is it really, really matters to pay attention to your audio and visual quality, especially when you're trying to make a good impression on someone that you are connecting with. So the first step is, if you can and you would like to, or you're able to, I really, really recommend using video if you are having some type of networking conversation. If you are meeting someone in person, you would have that benefit of being face to face, and you want to replicate that as much as possible and try to minimize the negative parts of being only able to connect virtually anyway. Video allows us to still have some type of personal feeling. You're able to read body language, all these things. We'll talk more in a second, but video is really important, even though it can be tempting to try to just do audio. It also can make the difference between telling if someone's making a joke or is serious about something, and all these things that you want to be able to read as accurately as possible if you are having important professional conversations. Also, with sound, you can have an external microphone, but I actually recommend even having a headset, because that can help with your audio does not go into the microphone, all these different things. You want to pay attention to that, because especially depending on the level or the importance of who you're talking with, you don't want there to be distracting elements. Paying attention to your lighting in your background is also really important. You want to make sure there's nothing distracting with lighting and or background. Usually somebody will notice your lighting or background if there is a problem. So if people don't notice it, then that's usually a good sign. You want to make sure that there's nothing you don't want to be seen. You can take a picture of your setup before you have a chat, and then check and make sure that everything looks fine and you've thought seriously about it. You don't necessarily have to go super dramatic and have multiple lighting sources like I do, but a lot of the work that I do is at night with people where it's daytime. For example, right now it is 7 p.m. where I'm at. It's completely dark outside. My windows are closed, my doors are closed, but I think the lighting looks fairly daytime-esque, which I'm pretty proud of, because it's something that I try to work hard on in order to be able to have the benefits of the daylight lighting. Of course, the best type of lighting you can have really is natural lighting. So if you're working during the day, you have the window open. And then there's the other side, or not the window open, the blinds open. And there's the other side benefit of this as well, of course. If you have sunlight lamps, for example, that can be really helpful for productivity and also mental health, especially as we're going into winter and lots of maybe even more indoor time than we've had in the past over the winter. Definitely recommend maybe investing in something like that if you work a lot from home, or if you have very unusual hours like I do, for example. There's a lot of research into this too. I recommend looking into it. Also, one thing you can do is not just take a picture of your background and see if there's anything there, but one pro tip, you can take a video of yourself and see everything. Does your frame include all of the arm motions that you might make as you're talking? Does it reflect the way that you want to be reflected? You can pay attention to all these micro expressions and body language that maybe you're not as familiar with doing over video. And even if it feels a little cringe or a little nerve-wracking to watch yourself on video at first, the more you do it, then the more comfortable you'll be. But at this point, probably a lot of people are more and more comfortable and confident about being on Zoom video chat. So this might not be as much of an issue as maybe it was in the past. And it goes to step 3, professionalism from head to toe. It can be so tempting when we are only doing a video chat online to just dress from the waist up, but I can only urge you to make sure you dress professionally completely, because it makes a big difference even in just how you feel. You would never wear half a suit to meeting somebody for coffee to have a professional conversation. So dress your best, and that's going to reflect in also just the professionality of or the professionalism of what you or of how you're connecting with the person that you're talking to. Another element of this is posture. My normal work from home setup and video chat setup, I'm actually standing, and I find that that works really well for me because a lot of the work I do, I have to be creative and brainstorm and have, again, all these hand motions. I'm very emotive, and so standing works really well for me for that. But even if you are sitting, then having good posture is very, very important. There are, again, numerous studies that talk about how this affects your energy levels, your self-image, your confidence, not to mention how you project and how you are perceived by the people you're talking to. So these may seem like very basic ideas, but they can make a huge difference in the impression that you can give, even when you have the barrier of only being able to meet online. You can't go in and have a firm handshake or start talking about the weather and have all these things and get comfortable. So you want to use what you can while you're connecting over a video chat in order to have as much of that connection as possible. All right, and then we have step 4. It's all in the eyes. And now what this means is where you are looking can be very, very obvious to the person you are talking to. So you want to pay attention to where your eyes are looking. And there are a few different tempting places to look. So just in a very quick activity, I'm going to ask you to tell me, where are my eyes looking? So where are my eyes looking right now? Anyone can just jump in. You can just unmute yourself, and where am I looking right now?
You're looking to the left.
I'm looking to the left, exactly. And I'll show you guys in a second, but I'm looking at the notes that I have on my screen. And if I were reading them word for word, then I would look like this, and it would be very, very, very obvious where I was looking. All right, now where am I looking?
Off screen to the right.
Yeah, so it looks a little bit like I'm looking off screen to the right, or it depends on who I'm looking at. But when I'm looking right here, I'm looking at one of the people that are on the screen, one of the participants. And so if I'm looking at the person that's on that grid, then it'd be right here or even right here. It may look like I'm almost at my camera, but not quite. And then very obviously, right now I'm looking at the camera. And these are all these different options that you really have. And if you're not thinking about that, then you might find yourself looking at places, and it can be quite distracting to the person you're talking to. Maybe you've experienced this on the other end. You've noticed that someone's always looking to the left, or always looking down, or always looking somewhere particular. It can be especially tempting to look at yourself while you are video chatting to see, how do I look? Does everything look fine? Wow, I didn't realize that I looked that way. Why is the lighting like this? Oh, wait, my ukulele's in the background. Like all of these different things that we can get very distracted by. So you want to try to avoid that. The best place you can look is actually in the webcam. And that is because when we are connecting with people in person, where do we want to look? In the eyes. We want to make eye contact. And when you are video chatting, the best way that you can make it seem like you're making eye contact is to literally look directly in the webcam. However, the caveat of this is it is quite difficult then to be able to read the body language of the person you're talking to. So maybe you can rely on intuition and periphery, and depending on what you're thinking of or just expecting them to be saying, you can try to respond that way. However, if that's not something you're very comfortable with, or if it starts to feel very strange and you're also looking into the cold circular lens of a camera, that can have absolutely diminishing returns and is not worth it just to make it seem like you were looking directly in the eyes. It can also maybe be too intense depending on whatever the conversation is going. So that's one thing that you can think about. But if you can't look directly into the webcam, then look at the person that you are talking to. And that is the best way that you can then reflect all of the classic active listening skills that we want to be using when we are connecting with anybody, especially networking, especially in person, but especially when we are on video chat. So pay attention to where your eyes are. You also want to be careful about if you are wearing glasses and your glasses reflect your screen, and even if you were trying to seem like you were looking at the person, but then it's very clear you're actually scrolling something on the side and it reflects. I wore glasses up until a few months ago, and I know that this was something I always had to pay a lot of attention to because it can be very, very obvious. Even if you think that you're not being obvious, it gets just all the more amplified when you're video chatting. So something that can be overlooked, pun intended, is where your eyes are. And then step 5 is active listening times a million. I already mentioned active listening. Active listening is important no matter who you're talking to. At any point, you want to be listening to the person you're talking to and showing these active listening skills when you're networking, all the more so. But when it's on Zoom or video chat of any sort, times a million. It is that much more important because it is so much harder. So this is something that you have to practice and refresh up on active listening skills. If that's something that you haven't thought about very intentionally recently, because there are many tried and true skills that you can actually implement into your conversational practice that will actually make a big difference in the way you connect with people. And just in short, there's smiling when they smile, nod to show affirmation, responding affirmatively to what they say, smile when they don't smile. You want to be oozing enthusiasm and appreciation and affirmation for what they're saying, essentially, when you are networking with people. You don't want to interrupt excessively, so nodding is a very good idea, especially if maybe the microphone's loud and you go, yeah, then that can actually be a lot more distracting than when you're in person. But you want to still try to implement all of these things and be as natural or seem as natural as possible while you are doing it. You can take a note from the improv handbook and think of yes and. So if you're networking with somebody, your goal is not to debate them. You would be in a different situation if you were trying to debate with someone, but rather you were trying to connect, network, learn from them, whatever it is that you asked about when you first reached out. That is the goal. You're trying to hear from them and hear from them, from their expertise. Even if everything they say is something that you have heard 100 times before, you want to still show appreciation and show interest, genuine interest in what they're saying. And we'll practice this later, but it is a really important and useful skill to be able to find a way to actually not just feign interest, but have interest in what a person to you is saying, because that is one of the best ways to connect with someone if you are interested in whatever it is that they have to say. A note that or a tip that you can use in regular networking, but also especially while doing any type of video chatting, is taking notes while talking. I would recommend doing it physically. You can say at the beginning, do you mind if I take some notes? I mean, for one, it shows that you are actually interested in what they have to say. You're not just networking for networking's sake, but you're taking notes and you intend on reflecting and actually digesting what it is. But also, if you are typing, then the clack, clack, clack of the keys maybe will get distracting. Maybe it'll pick up in your microphone. So doing something physical might be important, but also be careful, because if that makes you look down and then you're not paying attention to where your eyes are, you're no longer having the conversational element, then it just seems like a one-sided lecture. Then that can also have negative effects for sure. And like any type of networking situation, be prepared with questions, do your research beforehand, but still connect to what they say in the moment. Show you're listening, active listening once again. So that also brings us to some pro tips. I already talked about how you can take a picture and practice certain things in the way that maybe you used to practice in front of the mirror. Now you can actually practice on the digital platforms. Today, I went through this entire presentation and recorded it on Zoom and then watched it so I could see, okay, what am I not noticing? What do I need to fix? And all of these things. Those are benefits that we have with digital networking that we don't necessarily have in person-to-person networking. Another element of it, and I'm going to change my screen share very briefly to show you my entire desktop, is that we can have our notes on our screen next to the person that we're talking to. That is not necessarily something we can easily have if we're connecting with someone in person. We can't just have, their life story and everything we want to discuss and all of our questions there at the same time. So utilize that, but also be careful that that doesn't then make your eyes always look at that one location. So like during the activity, when I was looking to the left, if I were reading from the notes the entire time, it would be very obvious and it would not make as much of a impact or a connection as when I am looking directly into the camera. So have something that maybe you can refer to if you need a reminder about whatever it was that you want to talk about, but don't let it then totally distract you. And again, be careful if you have any reflections of not just glasses, but like a window in the background and then, or a mirror that then shows your screen and it's just, 90% their Wikipedia page and then their video, then it's going to be fairly obvious. So take advantage of these different things that we can do right now that we can't necessarily do while we are in person. You can also do it with a second monitor. But again, be careful if it's obvious. Right now, my laptop screen's over here, so I cannot even look at my laptop screen. It would totally distract me from the conversation or from the webinar. So you want to test all of these things and find a setup that works well for you, and then you can take advantage of all of that. All right. That is it for my specific video chat notes. Once again, or as always, you want to make sure that you show appreciation, that you thank excessively, not too much, but show all the type of thanks that you would in any type of networking. Send a thank you email, follow-up message, anything that you promise to share, make sure to do it timely and all of that. But the ultimate takeaway, this is true with any type of networking, the goal of networking is not to just gain all their expertise and learn how they were so successful and how they have done everything that they have. And so now you can have all of their secrets and now you can do it too. And the goal is also not to just present yourself, advertise yourself, give all your achievements and say, this is why you are so awesome and this is why you're amazing, this is why they should do everything they can to help you. But really the goal of networking is that the person you network with should feel good at the end of the conversation about taking the time to connect with you. It's very basic, but that's really the number one goal in a networking conversation, because then it's what happens after that conversation that really matters. If they feel good about the time that they spent talking to you, they're more likely to then connect you with other people. You're more likely to connect them with other people and actually build the branches that are in the definition of networking, having these meaningful connections that we ultimately want to be doing. Of course, you want to have a meaningful conversation in itself and have important content. And that's why you do your research beforehand. You have questions prepared. You ask meaningful questions after actively listening to what they have to say and all of that. But you want to also make sure that they don't regret taking this time to connect with you, especially if you're meeting with someone that maybe has a lot of requests all the time to do something like this. So you want to ultimately leave them with a positive feeling. It should be a positive experience networking. And that's why we want to take all these little steps in order to have as positive and meaningful of a conversation as possible. So let's review and we'll have another opportunity for some interaction. So first, what was step one? Clean your blank and blank desktop spaces. Maybe you can tell I'm a teacher.
Physical and virtual.
Physical and virtual, good. All right, everyone's got it. I'll give it another couple seconds if anyone really wants to put it in, but exactly. Clean your virtual and physical desktop spaces, or physical and virtual, whichever order it is, exactly. That is important. Number two, seek blank perfection. Audio-visual, exactly. Pay attention to how you look, how you sound, what's in the background, what's your lighting, all these different things, because they can make a huge difference on the impression you make. Don't be in the dark. If you can use video, and try to have as clean and positive of an interaction as you can, as if you were meeting in a coffee shop like we would in another time. All right, step three, blank from head to toe. Professionalism. Awesome. Professionalism, dress from head to toe. Also true, and that is a part of professionalism. So professionalism from head to toe, make sure you're dressed from head to toe and you're paying attention to posture if you can, and it's something that would be helpful for you. Like I said, standing I find to be usually my most preferred way of having video conversations, but that's not for everybody. And in any case, work on your posture. It's important. Step four, it's all in the eyes. Great job. It's all in the eyes. know where your eyes are looking. And it can be strange at first, and especially as you get used to looking into, again, the cold lens of the webcam and then pretending like you're looking into somebody's nice, warm, connecting eyes. It can be a strange experience, but it can really, really make a difference on the impression that you make as you're talking with somebody. Also, you can put your video very close to the webcam too, if you're very tempted at looking at your own video. And then even if you're looking at yourself, then it's not super obvious that you're distracted or you're looking at anything. And then step 5, blank times a million. Good. Active listening times a million. Always important. Attention is also true, definitely. But active listening is especially important when we're doing it virtually because it's that much harder. So do a refresher on all the active listening skills. I look it up all the time just to make sure that I'm always remembering, is there anything I'm forgetting, and all these different things. Very, very important. All right, great job. You all get A+. All right, but now this is your opportunity to talk about what it is that your main takeaway was. There's no right or wrong answer for this, but what did you take away from this about connecting over video chat? Or if there's anything that you thought of that I didn't mention, this is also an opportunity to put it in. Give you a bit of time to do this. It's all about the eyes. Looking into the camera. Active listening is so important. Good. Thank you. It's unclear how to set up and schedule. We can maybe talk about that during the Q&A session. Informational interview to building professional relationship. That's a good question. I'll give some extra time so people can get in anything that they want. Optimize human connectivity. Absolutely. Be careful if you wear glasses, right? If you have no option to not wear glasses, then just be careful or pay attention. When I used to wear glasses, it just had to do with where I put my lighting. Then I was able to find ways that it didn't reflect anything. Right? Treat virtual networking like you would in person. I think that's a really great takeaway. All right, I'll give you a little bit more time, right? Like you're meeting for coffee in person. It's the best way to really make the best impression. The impression left is paramount. Great. All right, thank you all. These are really helpful. And we'll try to address the questions. We'll have a Q&A section at the very end or fairly soon. All right, so we only have a few minutes left, and I definitely want to make sure that we have some time to answer any lasting questions if anyone has. So I'll just jump ahead. I had a few more, my teaching style questions just in case we had them, but Q&A if anybody has questions or comments that you want to share with everybody, but I'll also leave this on the screen in case anybody needs to leave. You can contact me. I have ronischrenk.com. I just got married a few months ago, so I got the domain. I was like, I got to do this. But all it does is link to my LinkedIn at this point. Maybe more will happen in the future. I have the LinkedIn, of course, and then my email. Please feel free to reach out to me if you want to connect afterwards. Absolutely happy to. I wasn't able to respond to all the messages that were directly sent in chat. But with that, are there any questions, comments, anything that we didn't discuss that you want to talk about before we're out of time?
Hey, Roni, it's Beth Woods. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Beth?
I'm doing well, thanks. I joined a little late, so I'm sorry if you already covered it. Could you talk a little bit about how to use Reddit? I'm 51, and I recruit, and the population of people I deal with ranges from like 26 to 66, and I use the other sort of standard tools, but I'm a little intimidated by Reddit. How often are people using that in the professional setting, and is it something that I should start to look into doing?
Sure. Yeah. So I don't have any statistics. I don't really know. I think there's a bit of confirmation bias, or if you use Reddit, then you sometimes feel like everybody's on Reddit all the time. And then you have to remind yourself that that is still a subset of the internet and certain people. So even a subreddit for a specific topic is not representative necessarily of the entire field of that topic. However, I think one of the best ways to really just get started with it is to go to reddit.com and then look at a subreddit that's relevant to your interest or to your field or just something. Like I know I shared r/productivity, for example, is one great place to start. I just think because it has a lot of tips, and then you might find a lot of different interesting things. But the way it works is anybody can post to a subreddit to a specific theme, and then anybody can either give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, or it's called upvoting or downvoting. And the posts with the most upvotes come to the front page. So you can understand how this can have both pros and cons when it comes to getting information. So for example, there's a subreddit that's r/collapse, and it's all about the collapse of civilization. And if you spend a lot of time on that subreddit, you might become convinced that everything is collapsing tomorrow, and you better go do everything you can to prepare for it. So there's some of the negative sides to it if you spend a lot of time on just one specific topic. But the flip side of that is it also tends to reward people that stay on topic. So for example, like the Ask HR, where HR experts and professionals respond to questions. If there are irrelevant questions that don't have anything to do with human resources or have already been asked before, then they probably won't get those upvotes and they won't come to the main page. So that's the pro and con of it, is that it's very much driven by its users. So I think the best way to get started is just looking at one subreddit and starting to just read what's there. You'll see on the front page of that subreddit what posts are at the top of it, and then you can click on a post and there may be a link to an article, and then anybody can comment, and you can comment on those comments, and then it just becomes all these embedded threads of conversation, which can be really, really useful for knowledge building. And sometimes very experts, or a lot of experts at certain topics, might put their information there or be happy to share. And then you can also have private messaging through the website as well, so people can direct message if they want to connect. There's also a new chat feature, and now something very new is there's even live discussion forums that really, in just my anecdotal experience, seem to totally explode over the course of the pandemic. Of course, a lot of people were at home, and so then they would go to, okay, the r/work from home lounge, and then everybody that was live on the chat, then they would be chatting about, oh, what are you doing for this work from home situation? So it's a way of crowdsourcing knowledge.
Thank you. I do want to be mindful of time. We are just a little bit over. So thank you, everyone who has stayed with us. We understand if you had to drop off. And we have some interesting conversations in the chat going on. I would say we are having career month content that's addressing some of these questions and informational interviews and how to follow up all month long. So please check out our website